What I love most about making these unicycle videos is that I get to come up with crazy ideas and try and turn them into reality. The best is when an idea seems impossible, but when I try it, I realize that maybe someday it could become a real possibility. And of all the things I've tried on the unicycle, paddleboarding encapsulates this the best. I first tried unicycling on the paddleboard just over 3 years ago. I failed so many times I lost count, with every attempt lasting no more than a fraction of a second. By the end, I was able to stay up on the paddleboard for almost 2 seconds, idling back and forth once. I know it doesn't seem like a long time, but I was able to learn something. It allowed me to see the actuality of what I was doing, where previously there had only been doubt. I knew that if I could keep the paddleboard under my wheel without having it shoot out from underneath me, I could do it. After those attempts, I decided I needed to come up with an amount of time that I considered having officially unicycled on the paddleboard. I came up with 8 seconds. It seemed like an apt number since that's what bull riders consider a full run. And clearly unicycling on the paddleboard and bull riding are the same thing. A couple years later, I decided to give it another go. In my head, I had a technique worked out, but reality was much different. While I was able to idle one more time than my previous best attempts, the overall time was actually less. I just couldn't keep the paddleboard underneath me. It was a failure, nowhere near the 8-second mark. But not yet ready to give up and still determined to make it happen. A year later, I decided to consider comments that I had received from my first paddleboard video. They basically suggested adding a perpendicular fin to the bottom of the board to slow down its back and forth movement. Desperate to make it happen, I did just what they said. First, I found a piece of plywood that I could use as a fin that would run perpendicular along the bottom of the board. Next, I had to cut it to fit, and then I just had to secure it to the paddleboard. And for that, I had to go to the hardware store and pick up some supplies. Then it was just a matter of some drilling and screwing, although I have to admit I was a little apprehensive to drill holes into my paddleboard. But I guess that's what I had to do. And the well nuts were the real hero here, as they allowed me to really secure the fin in with the screws. And then there it was. I had managed to secure a perpendicular fin to the bottom of the paddleboard. It was ready to be taken out. But I had no idea what to expect. Would the extra weight from the board make the paddleboard too heavy? Would it make any difference at all for trying to unicycle? Did I drill holes in my paddleboard for no reason? There was only one way to find out. With the fin on it, the board itself was harder to navigate, but that's not why I was here. I was here to unicycle on it. And it had to work, right? I spent all this time and effort into it, so it would surely be easier to unicycle on. Okay, so maybe it didn't look any better, but it felt different. The fin attached to the bottom of the board really slowed down the back and forth movement and helped me to stay centered, but it was by no means easy. I had to maintain near perfectly centered idles since every idle was magnified by the motion of the board. And if I got too close to any corner of the board, then game over. But despite all this, after a few attempts, I was able to beat my previous best time. And the more I practiced, the better I got. By the end of the day, I had nearly doubled my time, and I knew I could do better. But I was frustrated. I mean, sure, the extra fin helped a little, but only by a few seconds, and I was still a ways away from my 8-second goal. Plus, time was running out. It was mid-September in Maine, and any day now a cold front would come through and make the water way too cold to swim in or fall in. So I gave myself one more day to try and get the seemingly absurd goal of 8 seconds. On the second day, I was much more consistent in my attempts and felt more stable on the board. Despite my consistency though, I just couldn't seem to idle accurately enough to stay on the board for more than 4 seconds. I was pretty much resigned to the fact that 8 seconds wasn't going to happen, and my lofty ambitions would have to be shelved for at least another year, or maybe forever. In lieu of my goal though, I figured I could put the GoPro on the front of the paddleboard for a different perspective, and at least have some interesting footage. Then, on the final attempt, something clicked, and there it was. I felt like I was up on the board for days. By the time I came off the board, I knew I had done it. I had made my 8-second goal. Yes! 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 That's it. We're done. Thank you so much for watching me on this journey, eventually achieving what I thought was impossible. I can't wait to see where our next journey will take us. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Do it on a unicycle.